It's Nick Norton here. Welcome to part 2 of my video on using reverb in Pro Tools. However, these exact same techniques can be applied to virtually every single DAW there is. So if you're not using Pro Tools, I encourage you to watch anyway. Alright, so in the last video we looked at the basic parameters of a reverb. Let's make this guy active, such as decay time and pre-delay to tell us the size of the room and the wet-dry mix. And in this one, we're going to look at how you would actually use a reverb to make a mix sound richer and more realistic, and all those nice words you want to use to make your music sound good. So let's first just listen. Right now, I have reverb on all of these tracks. How to do that, we're going to explain in a moment. But I'm going to start playing it on and then turn it off so you can hear the difference. By that, I mean start playing it off and then turn it on. Let's start with it on. It's easier to tell. See, you hear all that decay after the sound stopped, even when I just pressed space to stop it. That's what simulates being in a room with all these instruments and makes them all sound much richer. We actually want to think about that for a moment. When we record, we usually have the microphones extremely close to the sources. There's a mic right on the kick drum, a mic right on the snare drum, a mic right in front of the guitar amps. And the reason we do that is so that we can treat each instrument individually. We can EQ each one individually and adjust its volume and add effects and stuff like that. But that's not how we listen to music. When you go to hear a rock band, you don't put your head right next to the kick drum because it would sound awful and you wouldn't be able to hear anything else. So we get all of these sounds blended together, and the reason we need reverb, I'd say it's pretty integral to any mix, is to make it sound like you're actually there and not like it's some weird, unblended, not recorded at the same time kind of thing. So learning to use reverb is super important. Alright, how we actually do this. If we were to put a reverb plugin, such as the one that comes with Pro Tools, the Deverb, on every single track, let's haul, medium, whatever, doesn't matter for this demo, we would be using a ton of processing power on your computer. If you have a real fancy computer, this doesn't matter so much anymore in 2023. But if you're on a normal computer, or if you just don't want to lose the plugin slot, the way we do it is to send the sound from all of the tracks down to what is called an aux track. I've got one at the bottom here, and put the plugin on that so that all the sound is processed together. In addition to being good for computer power, it's also good to be feeding all of this signal into the same reverb unit, here's a fancy one, so that it can literally do the processing to all of that sound together to make it seem more like they are playing together in the same room. So, how do we do that? I'm going to walk you through it. I'm just going to deactivate and hide this guy. And we are going to make, oh, I didn't hide him, did I? Hide. We are going to make a new reverb track. So the first thing I'm going to do is go track new, and then instead of an audio track, we are going to select an aux input. This is an extra input on your mixing board or whatnot, as opposed to the primary input, the instrument that you're recording. We can also route things to this auxiliary input. Let's make it stereo because reverb is good in stereo. They make them up to, Dolby Atmos, and mono ones can be kind of fun for like adding guitar effects that, sound like a plate reverb or a spring reverb, but usually I just pick stereo for reverb and call it a day. All right, we're going to call this reverb big, because my previous one I made was realistic. So this one's big. And then before we put the plugin on it and start working on it, we got to make sure we are sending sound there. So there's an easy way to do it and a slightly more legit engineering way to do it. I'll show you the easy way first. Is in this column called Sends, you can click on an open one and come down to track and select the track we just created, reverb big. There. Now we see the input of this track just got named after itself, and the send here has the same name. Now we could have just sent the output of this track to the exact same place. The reason you wouldn't do that is we want to hear both the original material that is coming to our, in my case, mix track, to you at this point probably speakers, and this new track, which I'm gonna put to my mix track. Don't mind me for a second. Close your eyes, close your eyes, close your eyes. Where the hell's my mix track? There it is. Okay. So if we want to send it to more than one place, we have to use a send. So having a send essentially adds an extra fader at the bottom. See, if we click on our little output here, it brings up this guy that controls the volume and the panning and the solos and the mutes. We have the exact same thing if we click on this send that we just created. So if we bring this up, it's going to start sending sound to this aux track that we made, and I will demonstrate that just with our synth here. You saw the lights start to go up down here concurrently with my turning up this fader, right? That is the basic way we do the routing. I'm going to just set this at 0 for the moment. We're going to talk about how to actually mix with these faders a little later in this video. All right, let's recreate this send on all of them. And the way to do that easily is to hold the Option key and click and drag, and that copies an insert or a send with all of the settings. See, this is already up here at 0. The reason this is 0, by the way, is it means no change. Here you're adding gain, and here you're taking away gain. So we also call 0 unity gain. I always wondered about that, why the numbers were negative when I was starting out. So now you know. Right, so I'm just copying this send, which is active at unity gain, to all of my tracks. And I know that's not all that interesting, but the next thing we're going to do is to put a reverb plugin on that aux track we just created. And there, now it's on everything. And you can, in addition to using the fader to adjust how much is being sent, command click to just deactivate it, to bypass it is the correct word. So you command click and they go away. Or, and I use this tool a lot, if you command option click, it turns off all of the sends. So if you're like, oh, I want to compare, is the reverb, good at a good level, as opposed to moving it up and down, you can just turn off everything sending to it and see if you like the difference. All right. Anyway, back to what we were doing. So I've got all of these on right now. Let's put a reverb on this track, and let's use one that you all have, Deverb. And the big difference between doing this on single tracks and doing it on a bus track or an aux track is that you want the wet dry 100% wet, because you already have the dry coming from up here, and you just want to be able to control the effect with the volume of this track. I'm going to make this reverb sound completely ridiculous for a moment. Let's put it on church. Let's give it a 45-second delay. Let's get rid of this stuff so everything comes through and it sounds all muddy and terrible. Let's bring up the gain. and let's just hit it. So yeah, like we expected, that sounded awful. You can actually see that it is still going here. That's because it's going to last for 45 seconds. If that's ever happening, just like do that and it disappears, and then put it to wherever you want. But I made that sound ridiculous so you would get the basic idea. You can also turn your reverb on and off just by muting the track it's on instead of like deactivating 80 plugins if you're doing it that way. So let's do something slightly more realistic with this. Maybe hall means like concert hall, medium, a little less, just like realistic sounding, you know? Let's make it like a, 20-foot wide room, or what is that, a 28-foot wide room? Yeah, cool. And let's listen to that, and then we'll talk about how you might actually send signal into that in a more detailed way. Still too much. Sounds more realistic, but what we want to do to control that is to bring the volume of this track down. So easy way to do that is to click on the right edge of your output, and it pops up your fader here, and you can just drag it. You can also, if that's not up or you have a different fader up, if you're on the multi-tool and you put it above this yellow line, I think that matches the color of your track actually, does it? Yeah, cool, look at that. Above this line, which is our automation line, which is actually what the next video is about, we can drag the whole thing up and down. So it's good, I think, to start with it quiet and bring it up till you can just kind of obviously hear it, and then bring it down just a little. So let's do that. That's pretty blatant to me. So let's put it like here. And now that sounds pretty conservative. You might, when I had it at the top, have barely been able to hear it. So again, to compare, we start with it on and then mute it. So that, to me, is quite clear. And I don't know, you should always check, more than a few sections of your song. You need to check the entire song. Yeah, so that's kind of working for me right now. Something else you can do when you're using this method is that all of these totally don't have to be the same level going in. So I hate reverb on kick drums for the most part because it makes things sound like super muddy. So I'm just gonna deactivate that by command clicking on it to bypass it. Listen to how much clearer the kick drum gets. It might be a little easier if I solo out the drum set for you to hear, actually. I could deactivate this guy too, and now we only have reverb on the snare drum. You heard it at the end there, but the rest of the beat was a bit cleaner. I'm going to leave it on the cymbals. You usually don't have it on bass because low end gets muddy, and maybe I want to make this guitar sound farther back, so it's got a lot of reverb on it, and I want this fuzz lead to sound a little closer to you, so it's got less reverb on it. So you can do stuff like that, and then use this volume to control the total volume of the effect while maintaining your mix going into it. If you do it the bypass way, you got to be careful because you might accidentally turn it back on when you do that command option thing, so I usually actually don't bypass sends. I just take them all the way down because then you can always see what they're at when you click on them as opposed to forgetting if they were supposed to be on or off. But you do you. Okay, final little thing or to say is that if for whatever reason you're not seeing your sends, remember you can click up here to see what is available or missing. So like there's another 5 of them, or we could take them all away if we don't want to see them. The other note regarding that is that you can create, rather than sending these sends to a track, you can also send them to buses, which I think it's easiest to imagine as virtual cables. So the way you get buses is you got to set up an I/O and select bus at the top, and then check the ones you want to use, and you can rename them here, or if you click new path, you can create new ones. So I just activated bus 1 and bus 2. So like if I wanted to send sound from this track to this track and also a reverb, I could like output bus 1, 2 and make that the input here. Oh, that's mono, so it's going to be bus 1. And then create a send going to bus 1, 2, and create a new aux track. Command up and down changes the track type when you're on this menu. And now make the input of this track bus 1. If it were a stereo track, it would have given me bus 1, 2 as an option. So yeah, you can create these things to make your routing within the software very flexible. But for the most part these days, you can just use the send it to a track. All right, you got to play with that to learn it. Have fun.